Hi guys, and I was late because my internet connection was bad, but I have solved it. I hope I solved it. I will check sound quality. I solved it. I will check sound quality. Yes, it seems nice to me, not bad. And that's it. Wait a little. I'm opening the project. Okay. Now I'm using Easy EDA software also now for explain the circuit. Basically I want to explain also NPN BGT quickly. NPN BGT has three connections. Wait a second. Yes. One for base, collector and emitter. This transistor is basically a switch, and there's some diode. We can say like this. There is diode here, base emitter, and if current of IB is flowing from base to emitter, IC collector to emitter current will be IB çarpı IB times G. Yes, it's basically like this. So if we need to use like a switch, we can connect a load to it, maybe like this, and some load here, also maybe 12 volts. Sorry for my bad English, but I hope my English skill will increase over time. Okay, this is our load, and if you want to, yes, I will also add here RB and some maybe 3.3 volts. For this situation, example, if we have 1 amp load here, such a nearly 12 ohm load, if I for 1 amp and gain of 100 G, mostly HFE also, we need to flow IB current of 10 milliamp basically to switch this transistor. We are using a little current to control much higher current, like 1 amp. We are using only 10 milliamp and we are flowing 1 amp to collector to emitter. Yes, base, collector and emitter. This is basically a NPN BJT. Normally HFE also not constant. It is changing with collector emitter current. Also there is a lot of abnormality, non-linearity, but it's basically like this. In this video section, in this video tutorial episodes, I will explain how we can build constant current load. We need, I hope this is our design parameters are, I can say here, 10 amp, 100 watt, constant current load. And also I will explain basically op-amp. I want to do that. Op-amp also works basically, new one, yes. Op-amp has in plus terminal and in minus terminal. Also output. Op-amp equation, you can see a lot of examples with op-amps. Non-inverting amplifier, inverting amplifier, buffer, or differential amplifier, integrator, differentiator, and so on. All of this circuit using only this simple equation. What was that? Out, V out, this is also all of this, V voltage. Output voltage equals in plus minus in minus and times G. It is an open loop gain of op-amp. It is very high, like 10 over 5, 10 over 6 mostly. Okay, it's basically an op-amp. How we can use this? Op-amp basic configuration, op-amp can be used as a comparator. But why? But how it's possible? If there is, op-amp has also, you can see here, supply voltage. Yes, VCC and VCC plus and VCC minus, or VSS, you can say VSS minus. Also this has a supply voltage. This output voltage will saturate on VCC plus and VSS minus. Most of my circuit I'm using VSS to ground, so if we use here 5 volt and there 0 volt, output stay in 0 volt and 5 volt region, not exceed 5 volt, not going below 0 volt. So of course, how we can use with comparator. If I add here maybe 2 volt and here 1 volt, what will be? In this situation, in this situation, you can see this is 10 over 5, like 10 over 5. Output voltage, our in plus terminal has much higher voltage than in minus terminal, and if we use this equation, 2 minus 1 times 10 over 5. So output voltage wants to be 10 over 5, but it can't. It will saturate on only 5 volt. You can see. If also in other way, if we use here only 3 volt, 2 minus 3 minus 1 times 10 over 5 equals also minus 10 over 5, but it will saturate on 0 volt. So if in plus higher than in minus, it gives us 5 volt, other than it gives us 0 volt only. So we can use these two basic component, one BJT, or maybe it is power transfer, not it is not necessary to it will be BJT. It can also maybe NPN MOSFET, N MOSFET, N channel MOSFET is suitable. Also P channel MOSFET, PNP BJT. You can be like this, but I don't prefer this. You can, as you can see here, assume V in equals, I will open this again. If V in terminal equals 12 volt, it is common voltage, and R shunt 0.001 ohm, and if what does mean R shunt? R shunt, we can use shunt resistance to determine current like this, because we know resistance, we know voltage, we can measure it, and we can take current. If we want to set it to maybe 5 amp, voltage drop on this resistor will be 0.05 volt here, and this terminal needs to be 0.05 volt. So if we take Vref 0.05 volt and go the beginning of this, go step by step, and these are design considerations for now. And if in the beginning there is 0.05 volt, there is 0 volt, 0.05 volt, and this is also 0 volt. BJT bus emitter current is not flowing because this is also 0 volt. Everywhere is 0 volt now. So current not going, but we have voltage in plus terminal of op-amp. So current is a voltage of output op-amp, it will increase, so that it is going to BJT has diode, I say that. So after 0.5 volt, 0.7 volt, it will be current flow, start to flowing. 0.7 volt some current crossing here. Because of that, this voltage will increase. Such we can say maybe 1 amp flowing here, 0.01 volt. So our op-amp output also now wants to increase. You can see 0.01 volt. There are also some difference, not equal. After that, current will increase 5 amp. This voltage will be 0.05 volt, and op-amp, if this exceeds some more, op-amp voltage will decrease. So that we want to design 10 amp 100 watt constant current load. I want it because I'm using wait a second. It is very much. It can compare very high frequency, but I will explain that. I want to choose an op-amp. I want to use cheap one, and we will also examine datasheet of it. Yes. And after that, we need. I want to design this for measuring some power electronic circuits and measuring capacity of some batteries and so on. We need such a constant load device. We cannot use resistor precisely, you know. This is my goal in this design. Okay. Wait a second. I want to use my chat in my telephone so I can see exact time. Okay. Feel free to ask anything with our design. Yes, I have it now. I can see chat much better. Okay. We are again here. And we need one power transistor and one op-amp and one R shunt, but this is not seems like this because this is basic configuration. We cannot use this precisely and nicely, so we need to add some more, maybe some shunt from here. Why I added this? Why I want to add this R base? Because RB is RB is needed because we have voltage output on op-amp. And if we take a look on NPN BJT, base emitter current start to increase after 0.7 volts immediately. I want to show you some datasheet for explain this. Wait a second. Yes, I have found. Okay. I want to use this BJT. So, and I want to show some parameters of it. Base emitter, saturation voltage. Where is this? Okay, I will go. Yes, you can see here base emitter voltage and current behave like diode, and it will increase immediately after certain voltage like 0.6 volt, 0.7 volt, so that we cannot use this linearly, and this is bad for op-amp. Normally we need to examine a lot of parameters, we need to do a lot of calculations, but I can say it, base emitter, I can say it, op-amp control loop of op-amp control loop will very bad on such a situation. I can say it quickly. So that we need to do this linearly, and such a situation I will also explain. If there is a resistor, and like if we have 1000 G, I will clear this maybe. Yes, I want to clear. G equal 1000. It is on BDX53GC 1000 G because it is Darlington transistor. And we need 10 amp going through it. So we need, in such a situation, 10 milliamp current will flow to here, base emitter current, base current. But if I use 100 ohm resistor here, after 0.7 volt, current will start to increase, and if we assume this is 0.7 volt, so if I on 1.7 volt, this current will be 10 milliamp. But if we don't use resistors for 10 milliamp, this will be only 0.701 maybe. It is very small vision. We don't I cannot say we don't need it. We don't want it. Yes, we don't want it. So that we are using RB resistor. After that, what I can say, I want to be more quick. We need RB resistors. Also, we need power transistor can handle 10 amp. I want to show you also, and this, yes, I want to use 0.01 ohm because 0.01 ohm I also explain this. Yes, which resistors we need here? How much? What's the rating of it? We need 10 amp. I said we need 10 amp here. Yes, I can go again. No. Sorry. Yes. 10 amp flowing here, and so there is 100 millivolt drop, and so power equals V times I equal 1 watt. We can find 1 watt resistors easily, so that I will use 0.01 ohm. You can use more, greater than that, but you cannot flow 10 amp through it. So, or you need better resistors, maybe 10 watt resistors. You can use, but I will use 0.01 ohm. This is the rating. Also 1 watt, 0.01 ohm. 1 watt rating. I can't. Why it is? Don't know. Yes. Yes, 0.01 ohm, 1 watt resistors here. Also, I added some RB resistors. I will calculate it later. And also, this current mostly will be unstable because power transfer op-amp voltage is increasing, decreasing, and some ripples here. I don't want this, so that I want to add some capacitors, maybe 100 nanofarad. Quickly take it. Not important which one. Yes, 100 nanofarad. You need to calculate all of these parameters by, but I don't want to do this. I will quickly done it, and I will also simulate it. Okay, NPM BGT, I will change this. 100 nanofarad is basically it is basic one. Yes. Also, this current need to regulate, so I want to add other resistors here. Maybe, yes, this is here. Other resistors to here. 10 maybe 1K, not important. We will calculate it later. We will change this parameter, and I want to add another capacitor here for more stable operation. Also, this is our ground, and this is our 5-volt rail. 5-volt rail here also I can say I have also 5-volt rail I need to have, because in if we don't use here stable 5-volt, or maybe if we use V-in terminal here, we cannot use these power transistors below 3 volts, 2 volts. We cannot use it more higher range. I want to use it on a higher range, and we cannot use it. So I want to add another 5-volt rail to system. Maybe we can use some old phone charger, or maybe another way we can add it. Maybe like USB, maybe we can use USB to add this. And yes, after that, yes, I said I want to use these transistors. I have a lot of them, so I want to use it. Yes, also another. I want to also observe this data sheet, maybe. It is basically same. Also not include graph. Okay, this one is better. From Fairchild. Okay. We need to observe these transistors parameters. We need 10 amp, 100 watt rating transistor here. As you can see, voltage rating of it, we have BDX53C, so 100 volts rating, much higher than we need. I want to design maybe 30 volts, not higher than this, but we can use also 100 volt. We will see. Emitter base voltage not important. Collector current, yes, collector current is 8 amp continuously. Collector dissipation 60 watt. We cannot use this with 100 watt. What is the reason why we are not using on higher watt? If we can cool it properly with proper heatsink, maybe we can use on much higher watt. We can use it with higher watt, but we can't. What's going on here? Yes, we can see maybe IRFS 44N datasheet, and in here you can see this datasheet not included. Also, I will observe another thermal resistance, junction to case to sink, junction to ambient. As you can see, junction to case thermal resistance is 1.5 centigrade degree per watt, and it is stated 94 watt power dissipation max. If the case temperature is 25 degree, we can calculate the junction degree. 94 watt times 1.5. You can see 141. At 25, 166 centigrade degree of junction temperature with 25 degree case temperature. It is very much, you can see, it is very much. And this operation junction and storage temperature is 175 centigrade degree. Because of this, I want to use also this current parameter not enough for us. I want to use more transistors with parallel configuration. Also, we can increase this collector dissipation rating also. I will use some heatsinks. Heatsink with I can. It is disassembled from computer power supply, and I can say 7 centimeter, 6 centimeter per 7 centimeter, and some depth also. I can say this is front view, this is top view, and also this is 4.5 centimeter from front side. I will use this heatsink. This is disassembled from salvaged from computer power supply, and I will use an blowing fan through it. And I want to use also maybe some temperature control. If temperature may be higher than 60 centigrade degree, fan will start to blowing. Yes, I want to do this. And after that, I want to use 3 of BDX53C, and scheme will be like this. You can see. Yes, and yes, it's enough. This is only schematic. We can also build some PCB on this site. You can do as you wish. Nope. I don't want to see this as display name. No. No. And no. But how we can control now? How we can control it? Yes, I will add RB. Yes, this will be Q1. I can't. Why? Ah, yeah. Okay. Q1, Q2, and Q3. Yes. RB1, RB2, and RB3. Okay. We need to use RB for every transistor, because every transistor is unique. This is not same. All BDX53C not same. It is all of them different. We cannot use in we cannot use it with one resistors, because if we use this base emitter current will not be same. So that also connect collector emitter parallel also is not desirable, but we will use in this way. Yes, connect all of them. And also V-in terminal. Nice. Yes, going upside. Okay. I want to filter also current, and I want to filter also this output voltage of op amp, base currents also. Yes, RB 1, 2, 3. And also we have some resistors here. We will calculate all of them. We don't need certainly this, but I want to filter it. So I will let maybe 1K, we will calculate it. Okay. What we have missed here? Yes. For equal how I can say, for equal sharing current, collector current, you can add resistors to all of these transistors series, like this. 3 resistors, all of them not connected there. Yes, you can connect all of them with this, but I don't want to use it in such a way. It can be some different, because we have much higher maximum ratings than 10 amp. We have 24 amp rating. If we product it with 3, we have 24 amp rating. It is much higher than we need. And also we have 108 watts power dissipation rating. It doesn't matter for us. I hope it is not a problem. Okay. Also, that is nearly this. We don't need more than this. Yes, calculate these base transistors is important. And going for datasheet, you can see HFE DC current gain is on VCE 3 volts, IC 3 amp is 750. It is very high rating. You can see minimum this, and also you can see here HFE is not constant. It is differ with collector current. It can go higher and higher in 2 amp. You can see nearly 2 amp region, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 gain it can achieve, because it is Darlington transistors, not BJT. It contains 2 BJT here. You can see. Yes. So that we can take also 750 or 1000. Not very important, but I will take 750 for more precise, more offset calculations. Yes. Also, I want to show op amp parameters. I want to use LM358P because it's cheapness. We don't need highly precise or lower offset gain, lower input offset voltage op amp. We don't need this. We can use basic op amp like LM358. You can see I want to show the data sheet. Yes, it contains 4 op amp, but we only take a look for 358. Yes, 358 only. This maybe. Yes. Yes. Electrical characteristics. As you can see, also I want to, yes, recommend operating conditions, absolute maximum ratings. Absolute maximum ratings seems 32 volts supply voltage maximum, and minus 0.3 volts minimum voltage for supply voltage. Differential voltage also up to 32 and minus 32. It is very nice feature. Input voltage, we can use it up to 32 volt, but it is absolute maximum, not recommended condition. Recommended conditions is maximum 30 volt. But I said it, I want to use it only in 5 volt region, so that we don't need to use this higher voltage. Yes, we can go downside. Junction thermal information not important in with such thing, not important. Yes, we have PDIP and 85 centigrade degree per watt. It is very higher than we need it. We don't want to use it in 1 watt configuration. Okay. Also, you can see input offset voltage. It is not important for this design. Input offset current, input bias current, high level output voltage, low level output voltage. Yes, this is important. High level output voltage. This also, yes, wait some. Output current, I will take a look after. Output current, source current minus 30, typical minimum minus 20, and sink current 10 milliamp. It is important for us. Also, in full range it is also decreasing this temperature range. Short circuit output current 40 amp. Very nice. Also, yes, large signal differential voltage amplification. As you can see, 100 volts per millivolt. Typical minimum 25 volt per millivolt. What does it mean? It gains is 25,000 at least. Much higher than we need. This gain is not important also in such comparator application. Not very important. It is important, but not very important, I can say. Common mode rejection ratio, not important. Also, this is very important on current sensing, high side current sensing, but not important here. Supply voltage rejection ratio also not important because we want to use 5 volt only. Yes, I want to say, yes, supply voltage, minimum recommended operating conditions, minimum 3 volt, maximum 30 volt. So we need at least 3 volt voltage. I want to use 5 volt more for more stable conditions, and also yes, high level output voltage. You can see here, if our load higher than 2 kilo ohm, high level output voltage will be minimum VCC minus 1.5 volt. What does it mean? If we use 5 volt supply voltage, it can only give us 3.5 volt. not higher than this. Yes, this is very important in our application. This is very important, I can say. Also, low level output voltage, you can see yes, not important. Low level output voltage are load if lesser than 10 kilo ohm full range temperature range, it will be 5 millivolt only. You can see here only 5 millivolt. Okay, I want to examine also here. Yes, no, it is basically same. Okay, yes, so that we cannot use I also want to show, where was this? Yes, wide unity gain bandwidth is 0.7 megahertz. Open loop differential voltage gain 100 dB typical. Yes, I can say it is very greater. It is very great for this application. And yes, that's it. Low supply current drain independent of supply voltage 0.7 milliamp. Yes, this is also input bias offset current, high level, low level. Yes, it is stated on beginning. And as you can see, 0.7 milliamp current consumption from quiescent current consumption. Yes, so that, and if we use 5 volts and if we want what can I say? Yes, 3.3 volt maximum voltage here. If we take this 3.3 volt maximum, start this again. If we have 3.3 volts here, maximum voltage I can take because it can be different, and this is our design considerations. 5 we are using 5 volt and minus 1.5 is 3.5 volt, but I will take 3.3 volt. After that, you can see here yes, this current gain is 750. So for 10 amp configuration, and I want to use 5 amp, maybe 4 amp for each, I want to take this. After that, 4 amp flowing, all of them is same, and we need at least, calculate it quickly, 4 divided by 7500, yes, 750, and it gives us nearly 5.33 amp milliamp. 5.33 milliamp. Yes, we can use, I think, 5 milliamp. We can use 5 milliamp, and for 5 milliampere, where is the base emitter voltage? Where was that? Base emitter saturation voltage. Oh, this, yes. Because of these Darlington connections, we need much higher than 0.7 volt. It seems we need 5.4 volts at least, or maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 amp, 2.4 volts. 2.4 volts. It is greater than I think. This base emitter voltage is not stable. It differs with collector currents very much. Okay. I want to take a look for other data sheet of BDX 53 also. Oh, what was that? Collector cutoff current, on voltage, collector saturation region. Yes, base current versus collector emitter volt, and HFE DC current gain, collector current. Are there any graph for VBE and IB? I'm looking for this VBE and IB, but I can't see. Maybe we can see on other manufacturer. I hope better datasheet. This is collector current. I don't want to use it. I want to use base emitter current, but 1, 2, 3, 4. We need to use 4 amp, maybe 10 plus 10. 4 times 3 is 12 amp. Give some margin. Generally, give quick result. 2, 3, 4 amp. Yes, I can say it is nearly it is linear. So maybe we can use op amp directly. Interesting. It seems very interesting to me. I want to do some measurements with my BDX 53C. I want to do some measurements. Yes. Base emitter saturation voltage IB 12 amp, IC 3 amp. It is 2.5 volt. Interesting. I don't know. Maybe we can use other transistors. I don't know. Okay. Power rating. No. It says also IC is equal 3 amp, not 8 amp. on 3 amp, IB equals 12 amp, maximum 2.5 volt. It must give us 9 amp, not 3 amp. Maybe they limit it. I don't know. Maybe yes, it's test condition. Because DC current gain is much higher than this. IC current, all of them 3 amp. Yes, this is 8 amp only. Yes, I'm some confused about this. DC current gain is 750. Because of these Darlington connections, I think. Where is this? Yes, because these Darlington connections, it seems this voltage drop via diodes of this BJT is greater. So, okay, not important. I will take a look for this. Also, we cannot this collector emitter voltage seems high to me, but not important very much. Okay, what we can do? I want to say what we can do. I think maybe yes, we can take 2.5 volt. Okay, I will add only small resistors here for better current sharing, but not much higher than that. I will use small resistor here and here. Yes, I want to do this. Okay, I will only use small resistors for better base current sharing, not much higher than this. Maybe 100 ohm here. No. Okay, not important. 100 ohm. And say yes. For current flowing here, okay, wait a second. I want to take a look again. This, yes. 1, 2, this is typical. Yes, typical characteristics. 2, 3, 4, 5. For 5, yes, we have 2.5 volt like this. For 5 amp, we need 2.5 volts, and in 5 amp region, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can see there is 2500 typical current gain. So, and if temperature increase, this diode voltage drop, where is it? This diode voltage drop of NPN BJT's base emitter voltage will decrease. So I can say we can take at least HFE of you can see 2, 3, 4, 5. It says 2500 current gain, 2500 current gain. I will take only 1500. Yes, I will also round it, and 2.5 volts VBE to this. Yes, calculate for 4 amp current divided by 1500. You can see only 2.7 milliamp is flowing, and it is much higher than we need. Yes, I can say on 2.5 volt here. Yes, 2.5 volt here. Yes, also this 10 amp will increase this voltage, 0.1 volt also coming from here. It will give us 2.6 volt and 3. I can take 3 point, no 3.3 volt, 3.3 volts, and okay, 3 volt here. I can say so that nearly 0.5 volt voltage drop here and 2.6 milliamp flowing from here. I will give a lot of margin, maybe 4. Yes, I can take 0.5 volt divided by 4 milliamp. Yes, I can add 100, nearly 100 ohm resistors here. Yes, 5 milliamp. I can take 100 ohm resistors here. Yes, do this. 100 ohm resistors here, and with 500 milliamp, 5 milliamp flowing here. I calculated only 2.6 milliamp. Yes, this voltage will be nearly 3.1 volts, 3 volts. So 3 volt give us 0.3 divided by 0.015. Yes, I can take 200. No. Yes. 0.3 divided by 0.015. Yes. Maybe I can take 22 ohm resistors to here. Yes. Only 22 ohm resistor here. Okay. Yes, this is our design considerations. Okay, LM358 input impedance I want to take a look for it, and where is the input impedance? Resistance, impedance. It doesn't state. Okay, go for other data sheet. LM358 PDF. Also, I will look for on semiconductor. Yes, different manufacturer. Yes, output voltage low limit, output voltage high limit, input offset voltage, differential input voltage range, large signal open loop voltage gain. Yes, Yes, you can see 5 in 5 volt LM358 give at least 3.3, typical 3.5 volt. Yes, 3.3 volt concentrations is great. Yes, nice decision. And our load is 2 kilo. Our load is greater than this. Yes, we can change these resistors later also. This is basically starting resistors. We can also change this later. Output voltage low limit with 5 volt and our load, yes, this is millivolt only. Yes, 5 millivolt, not important. Output source current at least 20 milliamp. This is very different from the other data sheet, I can say. No, 358. Where is the input impedance? I saw in the data sheet, but I cannot see now. Mostly on 10 mega ohm, 10 giga ohm also. It is very high, mostly, but I cannot see. This is TI, not. Sorry. This is same, maybe not. Yes, this is low power. This is N. Okay, but mostly input impedance of op amps is very high, I can say, so that we can increase this resistor to maybe 100k. But I want to show you how you can calculate it. Also, RC resistor, RC filter calculator. I don't know. We can use it. One, not important, mostly. Yes. Yes. Cutoff frequency of, I can take maybe 10 kilohertz, also 1000 1 kilohertz also nice. We can see 100 nano. Yes. Calculate it. I don't know this site also. Yes, you can see for 10,000 frequency, cutoff frequency, R equal 160 and C is 0.1 microfarad. I said it. Okay, I want to show also LT Spice simulation of it. This filter behavior. Yes, take 160. I can take also maybe 180, but yes, take this only. 100 nanofarad. Small signal analyzers. Yes. And take 1 volt and simulate it. AC analyzes number of point, 1 point, Okay. Decade. Start frequency 1 Hz, stop frequency 1 MHz, and plot it. As you can see here, there's some problem. Maybe. You can see also this. Yes, you can see. No. Yes. Yes, you can see cutoff frequency is minus 3 dB. As you can see here, minus 3 dB. This filter, yes, I can say it. If we use 1 volt AC signal here, 1 volt peak to peak AC signal here, you can see output voltage, peak to peak voltage will decrease, and it start to decrease minus 3 dB at 3 kHz. We are using dB because logarithmic, yes, dB, because it gives us better view for examine this graph, and you can see yes, go back to linear, it's much greater. If there is 1 kHz signal, 100 kHz signal, this ripple will be reduced to 10 times. You can see. But I don't want this. I want to increase this parameter. How can I do? Yes, maybe 1000K resistor here, and you can see now it will start to decrease with much lower frequency. At 100 kHz now, it gives only 14 millivolt ripple. Okay, so what we can do, I want to use some filter here, basic RC filter here, and I think 1K plus 100 nanofarad can give us very nice smooth current measurement, I think. Yes. Also, yes, there are resistors not we need here. Mostly we need some resistor here for cutoff this transistor, but we don't need, because you can see here there are two resistors from base to emitter of this BJT. We don't need to use. Okay. Also, we can take a look for this 22 ohm resistor and 100 nanofarad. Yes, take a look for this. You can see it smooths only very high frequency ripple. Maybe we can increase this to 1 microfarad. But yes, it can give us better filtering, but I think I want to try 100 nano first, because it is very much cheaper, and if it doesn't work, I will change it to 1 microfarad maybe, because 22 ohm plus 100 nanofarad is much suitable for higher frequencies, not this frequency range, I can say. And after this, Yes. What is Vref? How we can adjust the current? This is 10 amp. 10 amp is maximum rating. I want to use it 0 to 1 amp. I don't want to use it on 10 amp mostly. So we need some reference. I say that reference, and for 10 amp current voltage drop of here will be 100 millivolt, and we need to set it 100 millivolt. How we can do that? It is basically, you can see, we can use some potentiometer. Basic pot. Yes. You can see, not important. It's only 1K potentiometer. Yes, I have a lot of this. How we can use it? Also, I want to filter this. Yes, and also I want to limit the current to 12 amp maximum. 12 amp maximum, 20% margin, error margin, and it will give us, how we can calculate it. Yes, don't use it firstly. We need some more resistors here. Yes, I can say it is R1, R shunt. Okay. Q1, Q2, Q3, and this. Yes. U1.1. Okay. I want to add some decoupling capacitors, bypass capacitors to here, near the IC 100 nanofarad again. It is basic capacitor rating, because this voltage 5-volt rail cannot be stable. It is not DC. It is not a. It can be battery, but maybe power supply, SMPS switch mode power supply, and there will be some ripple also. Okay. Sorry. And yes, we need to calculate these resistors and this potentiometer. Yes. Now, for okay, do this like this. It is our 5-volt rail, not different. This is our 5-volt rail, and I will also add here a capacitor. This is also do some filters, so you know this 5-volt rail is not stable, not very stable. So Yes, calculate this. We need 120 millivolt maximum. Yes, 0 to 120 millivolt maximum. I give some margin of error also, and how can I say, if we don't use this and connect 5-volt rail through here, potentiometer, this winding, this connection can go up to 5-volt and up to 0-volt. So we don't want this. We need to limit this voltage. So how can we do this? Yes, we can do like adding another resistors to here. Wait something. Yes, 1K. If it go here, it is 0-volt. Yes, if it go here, it will give us 0-volt. And if it go here, this will be 1K. But I don't remember exactly, maybe 10K. I will observe it. I have some potentiometer. Not important, it is only gain. We can change it quickly. And if this connection go there, there is 1K resistors and we need maximum of 120. We can calculate easily. You can see no, yeah, yes, 5. No, wait little. Yes, 12 divided by 1. No, we have some problems. Times 1K. No, I'm confused. I'm confused. I'm confused. Ah, yes. 5, 0.12 divided by 0.12 times 1K. Yes, 40K resistor going to here. Nearly 40K. 40K is not usable resistor. Usable, I cannot say, not common resistor resistance. So I will take 33K here. As you can see, if I calculate again, 1 divided by 34 times 5-volt give us sorry. No, sorry, 90, yes, 39 volts. Now better. 40 divided by 1, no, 1 divided by 40 times 5-volt give us 0.125 volt. Yes, nearly we need it. Okay, take 39K, press 30 here and say it is not pot 1. This will be R2. Okay. And but if it is 10K, we need to adjust it again. Okay. What we need again, yes. I want to add also, some temperature control of this. I said it before. What we can do this? Yes. I will close. Yes, I want to say this LM348 is contains 2 op-amp. You can see here, and I have some fan, blower fan, and I can use it maybe with some temperature sensors to stabilize this, to use this device. I want to use it. Yes, we can use some transistors and temperature sensors, so we can control the temperature with that. Okay, what we can use for it? I want to use a very common LM35 temperature sensors. Maybe you can use another, not important. And what is this? What give us these temperature sensors? Calibrated directly in Celsius, linear 10 mV per centigrade degree scale factor, 0.5 centigrade degree ensured accuracy at 25 centigrade degree. You can see it is very great for us. Rated for full minus 55 centigrade degree to 150 centigrade degree. Suitable for remote applications. Low cost due to wafer level trimming. Operates from 4 volt to 30 volt. 5 volt is needed, you can see. But you can use also up to 30 volts. Not important. Less than 60 microamp current drain. It is quiescent current. Yes, and so on. And it is basic diagram like this. You will connect 5 VCC to here, and output will be 10 mV per centigrade degree. On 25 centigrade degree, it will give us 250 mV. Very nice, very great. You can see how we can use in our application. Yes, we have another op-amp. I said it. And yes, okay, this is our second op-amp in same package. You can see. Yes, it is also U1, not important, U1.1. This is also U1. Why you don't want to do this? Sub number part, no. 2, not important. Yes, it is done. Also not important, I can say. And yes, we don't need to connect this terminal because they use common VCC and ground. Sorry. And what we can use, how we can use this? We need again some divider, but this time I think it can be constant and do some calculation again. Wait a second. Yes, BDX53. You can see this 60 watts limit. We need to do some calculations and say 40 watts for each. And yes, I want to calculate this case, the junction to case temperature. 150 minus 25 divided by 60, nearly 2.08 centigrade degree per watt. And if you use it with 40 watt, you can see it will, if case temperature is 108, the junction temperature of transistors will be 108. It is very much. And what will be our case maximum case temperature? And say 145 to here, and 30 to here, and yes. no, not do any margin. No, minus. Yes, you can see our case temperature only can be 41.667 with 40 watts heat dissipation. It is very high. You can see it is very low. I cannot say it exactly. It is very low. I think only 40 watts. Okay, maybe we can change the power limit also later, but I will take these considerations, and we can use temperature sensors, junction to case temperature, to maybe 40 volts. How much we get, how can we get 40 volts? Yes, I can get via this way. Yes, like this. Sorry. Yes. This is simple voltage divider again. We are using simple voltage divider. And what is the voltage rating of these resistors? I can say it can be 1 and 10K here, and for 40 centigrade degree we will take 0.4 volts here. Here will be 0.4 volt. So calculate it quick. 0.4 divided by 10. No. 0.4 divided by 0.4 times 10K. It gives us 115K resistors to here. If we take it 100K, what will give us? It is common resistors value. I want to check it. 10K divided by and times, yes, 45 centigrade degree. Not there is not much difference. I think it can be usable because also the transistors maybe not dissipated 40 watts, but I think this 100 watts is very great for this application. Maybe we can change it later. Okay. Sorry man. R2 go here, 39k here. Yes. $1K here, R1 here. Yes. Not important, but R3 100k, 10k, R4. Yes. Name and prefix is different, but I done with incorrect way. Not important. Okay. It can stay. Yes. Yes, it is also true. No, not true. Not important. It can stay here. Okay. And 100k, 10k, minus terminal. Yes, this minus terminal will go to LM35. Take one LM35. Yes, LM35 DT. No. Yes, like this. We have like this, and VS, Vout, ground. Yes. Wait something. Yes, hi again. I'm here. And go VS plus to 5 volt and go ground here, and yes, this will go here. Check it again, and yes, I will check it later because yes, we need some more calculations. I have buy some fan and wait some, I want to check it. I'm coming. I want to find it. And yes, Wait some more. Sorry. Yes, this is the fan which I buy it, and this is also PC case fan, and 8 centimeter, 8 centimeter, and 2.5 centimeter in depth. The manufacturers say it is not a good, I can say, not the best case fan. This is maybe worst one, but it is enough for our system, and it says DC 12 volt and 0.18 amp. We need to control this, and also how we can do this again. How we can do this? Yes, I have a lot of also 2 and 2 and 2 a lot of 2 ambient transistors. Yes, I want to take a look. What's the current rating? Yes, you can see current rating is 800 milliamp. It is greater than we need, and DC current gain is 75, also nice to us, and we need 0.18 amp, but give some margin. We can take, wait something, yes, not important. Yes, for 0.18 amp, I will give some margin, and 0.2 amp I will take it, and minimum current gain of 75. I can say we need only nearly 2.5 milliamp. You can see we need only 2.5 milliamp base current to drive these transistors. And what is the base emitter voltage? Nuts limit, yes. And collector emitter, not base emitter saturation voltage, yes. You can see 1.2 volts, 1.3 volt, and for base emitter base current for 500 milliamp, it is much greater than we need. It is 2.6, yes. Yes, we can take 1.3 milliamp. What is the difference? Yes, 2 and 2 A. Now, not important. We can take 1.3 volt base emitter saturation voltage. Yes, it is greater than we need, but I can take it for simple result. Take here 2 and 2, a lot of 2 transistors. Yes, take some resistors. That's it. Only we don't need precise like this precise calculation. It's only we are using only it with converter configuration. Not important. If there is 3.3 volt, and if this one have a 1.3 volt here, 2 volt voltage drop needed in these resistors. And wait something. wait something, 2 minutes break. Again, yes, I'm here again, and we will finish this design, I hope. We need only some more thing. Yes, use some terminal, maybe terminal. Oh, no, like this. Okay. Pin. Okay, not important, mostly, I can say. And this will going to our fan. This is his connection. This is fan. 12 volt lamp fan. I can say, and add this ground terminal here. Yes, we need 2.5 milliamp, 2.666 milliamp, with 3.3 volt here, 1.3 volt here. Maximum ratings, this is minimum, this is maximum, and we can calculate it quickly. 0.02666 give us 750 ohm resistance. Yes, like this. I will change, yes, like this. I will change this. But wrong now, maybe. Yes. No, go back. This go 1K and R1. Yes, like this. Yes, this is all is normal, not necessary to change. Okay. R shunt, yes, we need to change also, but no, not important. It can stay. We don't build any PCB from here. We can do, but I don't want to. I don't do this. Okay. After this, we have calculated this resistance, and if the current, if this there is 450 millivolts here, and if this, yes, sorry, if this base current increase, the fan will open. So if op-amp output will increasing, output voltage is increasing, this fan will blowing. So so that, what can I say? Yes, if this LM35 voltage, this temperature will greater than this 450 millivolts, this op-amp need to be open and also need to be working, and also this transistor working, and fan will blowing. So this terminal is wrong, I can say. Do this like, okay, yes, 2 is enough. Okay, yes, you can see if the temperature more than 45 centigrade degree, this op-amp voltage will increase, and this transistor base current increase, and this collector current increase, so fan is blowing. Yes, but there's some considerations, I can say. Collector emitter saturation voltage with IC equal 150 milliamp with IB 15 milliamp, 300 millivolts saturation voltage. I want to take a look for it, but no. Yes, I can't. I can say nearly 1 volt. Yes, I can say nearly 1 volt voltage drop. Maybe also 1.6 volts. But we can say quickly 1 volt. We need greater than 12 volt here. But this fan is not high grade fan. I think this is not this rating is not correct, I think. So I want to do some tests on it. For maybe 180 milliamp or maybe 150 milliamp, I will change this. I can change this, and after this I will select voltage. Maybe I also change. I also examine, observe this 2 and 222 transistor, and I think we can do much precise calculations after that. Maybe not needed. It is working. It will work like this, but we can change something on later with feedback from results test. Yes, that's it. Okay. I'm happy. We have done it, I can say. Okay, no, not important. 750. Okay. Have we missed something? I don't know. Maybe 10K resistors. This I want to check potentiometer rating, but I think this was 10K. Okay, this time this will increase to 390. It is not important. I want to limit, but you can use directly to it and control via control it via other parameters. Also, this base resistors, also limiting factor. You don't need these resistors mostly, but maybe we can change it later. But I want to limit the current because these transistors can handle 8 amp. Also can handle 12 amp. You can see with pulse. And if 12 amp going from here and all of them 36 amp flowing here. This is terrible. I don't want this. Also we can add some fuses to here or maybe V-in terminal. Yes, I can say we can add some fuse for something going wrong, because I want to use this design for also lithium-ion batteries, maybe lead acid batteries. I want to use this design. I want to add this design to my own little laboratory equipment. I want to add this. Yes, some fuse symbol, maybe. No. Yes. Ah, no. Yes. Nice fuse symbol. Not important. What was that? I can change. Our design considerations is 10 amp. I can say maybe go 12 amp, maybe 15 amp. Yes, I can say 15 amp fuses going here. Also we can increase this. Also this is possible. Also we can also we can increase this fuse 1 rating. It is possible. Also I want to add some voltage and current meter also, but it doesn't require to add from here. Add to here. You can see I have designed some watt meter, energy meter. Also we can see how much energy is going from there, but it is not important. We can add to in this design. Also we can use it separately. I will decide it later, I think. What is missing? I want to examine one more time. Also, we can add some reverse protection, reverse voltage protection with some diode. It is simply you can do like take 10 amp diode, not important, diode. Okay, one and not important. I only want to add the symbol. Yes, you can be like this, but diode also it is if it is Schottky diode, diode voltage drop will be very much. I can say it can be 0.5 volt with positive taken with positive. I can say it positively. If 500 millivolt and 10 amp is going, there's 5 watt power loss. We don't need this. This device, you can see, only will be used in load condition, you can see, but yes, I don't want to add this diode. Power loss is not important, this design, but this 5 watt power loss with diodes not seems nice to me. So we can add here some MOSFET. Yes, we can add. But also this reverse protection. Yes, I have seen some design for reverse protection with MOSFET. Maybe maybe we can use it. How? Okay, I want to show you. Not use this. Instead, we need to use some N MOSFET. Yes, we need MOSFET this time. Yes, IRF is 44N. It is not, I think it is not a great MOSFET, but it works. It has lower resistance than, it has lower voltage drop than diode, and we can use in this example. I think how we can use this will be our circuit. Yes, going to our circuit and go upside some. Yes, yes, and add some resistor here. Okay, and you can see we will examine V in will flow like this. Not, we are doing it correctly, and Yes. Wait something. Yes, I want to examine NMOS reverse polarity protection. And yes, and MOSFET. No. Yes, this works. Yes, yes. This will work. But it's connected. Yes, source going to there. Okay. Like this. This is some confusing, but like this, yes. This is yes, observe in this side, gate, drain, source. You can see if battery, if a power supply connected correctly, you can see current will flow here and gate voltage will increase. So gate source voltage, if gate source voltage higher than threshold voltage, this MOSFET will start conducting and it turns only resistance, not diode. Like 17.5 milliohm for IRFS 44N. So it works in correct way, but if we turn this battery voltage power supply to negative side, you can see some problems. This is plus terminal, this is minus terminal. Current cannot go to there, and minus terminal go here. Also, this will be 0 volt. This is 0 volt. This is like 10 volt battery voltage or just power supply voltage. And you can see gate to source voltage not seems correctly. Gate to source voltage will decrease. Gate source voltage is not higher than 3 volts, 2 volts. It's threshold voltage, so it will not open. But in such a situation, we need to use Zener diode, because yes, if we use it like this, we have some problems. What kind of problems? This MOSFET gate source voltage will increasing to Vin terminal, and like IRFS 44N, I want to look for it. No. Yes, take one data sheet. Yes, you can see gate to source voltage minus plus 20 volt. So we need to add some Zener diode to the there gate to source voltage. We'll solve it and add some maybe 10k or 100k, also not important, resistors. It will work, but I don't know it is necessary. It can be, but I don't know. If we don't have fuse, this diode will conducting. If there's reverse voltage, this diode will conducting, and very high current going from there to there, like 10 volt, 20 volt, 10 volt, 20 volt, going from this diode. It will give us a lot of current, like 10 amp, 15 amp for each, and it will destroy our circuits. But there is fuse. I think the fuse will blow, and it can protect us. But we need to change fuse for each reverse voltage. Maybe we can add this kind of this kind of thing, but I don't know. Also, yes, I didn't say, but we need 12-volt rail. We need other than VIN 5-volt and 12-volt rail. We can take 5-volt rail flow from wall, but via some USB chargers. Old USB chargers, not important. But for 12-volt, I want to use MT. I'm liking to use it MT3608. This kind of chip, you can see. Yes. It is boost converter and boost voltage from up to 28 volts. You can see. And very high efficiency, 97%. It is really nice, and I corrected. You can see for application 5-volt V-in to V-out 12-volt with 200 milliamp. We will use it in such current, and it will give us 93% efficiency. And I have corrected it. I have changed. I have tested, and it is nearly correct. Maybe not 93, but 90% plus. I can say 87% plus. It is very efficient, I can say, because it contains 80 million power MOSFET for like 4 amp switching current. It is great, I think. Also, we don't want to use it with 4 amp switching current, not lesser. And okay, this circuit, this boost converter mostly states switching current, because this is the limiting factor. You can see V-in go here to go there to ground. And this time L1 current will increase, and after this switch will close, after this switch is not conducting, current want to go from here like this. So the voltage, output voltage, increasing. I can say basically it is working like that. You can set R1 and R2 to feedback. Also a nice feature. And yes, what can I say? I can use like this one to yes, to add this 12-volt rail. We can say 5-volt to 12-volt. We can produce PCB for it. It's also nice. It's also great. I think it can be. We can use better, maybe better schematic, and we can use it for some PCB. Yes. Say only yes, you are going. It's all grounded. Yes. Empty. This is not only this is the board I will use. You can use also directly chip MT3648 and build such kind of circuit. You can get 12-volt rail, I can say. Maybe no, you will go there. Yes, I don't know we can use it or not, we will see, but yes, basically this will be our connection schematic. Yes, I don't want to use reverse protection, but you can use it, feel free. I hope the fuse will protect us because of this. I want to add some banana connectors also, and maybe I can add some DC connectors for 5 volts. I don't know. Yes, I cannot get 12 volt from Vin because easily, because Vin can be greater than 12 volt or lower than 12 volt. I don't know this now. This is the cause. If Vin lesser than 12 volt, we can use boost converter. If Vin lesser than 12 volt, we can use boost converter, but greater than 12 volt, we can use buck converter or linear regulator. Also, maybe we can use some inverting buck boost, but I don't prefer it. So we need to add second 5 volt rail for stable operation. You can do it, I can say you can do it with Vin terminal, but I don't recommend it with such configuration. But other op-amp, maybe other transistors you can do. And lastly, I want to say for BDX, yes, lastly, we can I want to say, wait, something, yes, collector current to collectors, yes, this you can see 5234 amp will give us 1.5 volt. We can use it with 1.5 volt VCE voltage with 4 amp. You can see, but this is typical characteristics. And also after there is not more much graph. I need more graph than this, but I can say this is BJT voltage drop also decreasing with temperature increase, I can say. So it can be better, I think, in most way. We can use this 10 amp region with only 1.5 volt drop, and also 0.1 volt to here. Total Vin input voltage seems to be, I think, I can say 1.6 volt. Maybe it can be 1.5 volt also. 1.6 volt to for now it can be up to 80 volt also. But you cannot do. Yes, I need to change. Yes, rating. This power also limiting factor up to 100 watt. I don't know. No. Yes, this is maximum ratings also. Yes, 100 watt. I can say 0 to 100 watt. Yes, do some better. It is not working. Okay, not important. Mostly. Yes, 0.0 amp to 10 amp, 0 watt to 100 watt. Yes, I can say. But this all of them is limiting factor. We cannot exceed 10 amp. We cannot exceed 100 watt. But this 100 watt also can be lower because I can. It is very dependent for it is very dependent on heatsink performance, fan performance, heatsink performance, I can say. Yes, that's it. And I also want to calculate this fan current, this 5 volt rail current. There is a little bit current going to here. I can say maybe 20 milliamp maximum. It is maximum rating. And also there is not much current going from here to here, I can say. And also not much current going to go here, less than 1 milliamp. It can be ignorable. Also this current also ignorable. I can say 20 milliamp here, up to 180 milliamp, and but this is 12 volt, and if we assume 0.9% 90% efficiency, 12.5 times 0.18 times divided by 0.9, it will give us 0.48. I can say total of 0.02 up to 0.5 amp power needed. I can say 0.5 amp current needed maximum for this circuit, I can say. I can say 0.5 amp here, 0.2 amp here. Yes, that's it. We have designed. No one watching now, but I think we have designed it. Yes, I can increase this capacitor. I think I have said that. Okay, I think we have done it. No more than this. Maybe we can change also this voltage, and also we can go negative feedback to temperature to this transistors base current, but we can do this. But I think it is not suitable. It is not suitable for this application because we want constant current, but this we can be decrease our constant current with in 45 centigrade degree. If we can add 100 centigrade degree, maybe it can be, but in this application we cannot use this, I think. I don't know, maybe we can add, I don't know. It is possible. Again, add another op-amp also, possibility. Yes, that's it, I can say. I will design this, I will test, I will design on perf board, some perf board, and test it. I hope it will work, and we can use this design. I hope I can use this design on my laboratory. Okay, that's it. Anyone have no question? So if you like this video and if you like this video and wants to and if you want to upcoming videos in this series, subscribe to my channel and like the video and make some comments. It's very important, I can say. Yes, I'm uploading also game video. You can also take a look for these videos. Okay, see you later, guys.